That's the ebb and flow, like the figure eight. It has to flow out and in and out and in. And you have to be able to have that flow open on both ends.
Yes.
Most people clamp it off on one end, the other, or both. Some people clamp it off to where they don't let any go out. And some people clamp it off to where they don't let it come in too. Again, where like you said, oh, I felt guilty charging for it. That's clamping it off and preventing it from coming in. I don't think a lot of people understand how hard that is to trust when you're, especially when you're going through something scary. You know, like let's say you're a millionaire and your business crashes. Are you able to trust that this is happening for a reason? Are you able to maintain the faith through that terribly horrifying experience that maybe the universe is doing this for a reason? Are you able to hold that? That's the tough part. Is learning how to trust in the process. And that's what I spend most of my time trying to help people understand is, you know, because so many people will say things like everything happens for a reason until something happens that they don't like. Then everything happens for a reason goes flying out the window. You know, it's like, no. Everything happens for a reason. And this is where you go into playing with the quantum field, where one of the things that I like to help teach people is that every possibility out there exists, every one of them. And so how do you connect to the one that you want? It's not figuring out every step to make it happen, because people do that and then that gets into the ego brain, just recreating another mess for itself. But so like say for example we wake up tomorrow and YouTube crashes. So that's like a third of my income, my YouTube check, you know? So most people would say, oh, what am I going to do? Oh, and they're freaking out. What I'm doing is I'm reaching forward into the future in my mind, and I'm connecting to the version of me 2, 3, 4 years from now, who is looking back on YouTube crashing. And I'm telling that as part of the story as how I became even more successful. And I'm staying connected to that. And it was so funny too. I forgot to tell this little story where I'm convinced this was one of the 2 times that I believe that either one of my guides or one of my guardian angels visited me in human form. This is when I was homeless. In that little town I was homeless in, there were churches all over that town that would have feedings where they would feed the homeless. So you had a schedule. So like on Monday, you go to this church on this street at 11 and there's a feeding. And on Tuesday, you go to this church. Well, I had just left one of those feedings and I was walking back to the bridge that I lived under. And I'm just kind of not in a big hurry. You know, I ain't got nowhere to go. So I'm just kind of kicking rocks down the street. And then this car pulls up next to me. And he rolled his window down and he said, "Hey, you're going to be so successful. One day you're going to be riding around in the back of a limo with a chauffeur driving you around." And I said, "What?" And he rolled his window up and drove off. And I was like, that was weird. And then I remember for the first time in my life, I opened a door in my mind that I had never opened ever. I thought, you know what would be weird? What if he was right? Wouldn't that be weird? And I started fantasizing. And I got stuck in this fantasy world of imagining myself being so successful. And I'm telling that story. And I'm telling the story of how I went from being homeless to successful. Now, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. It wasn't until like maybe a couple of years later that I realized that what I was doing was I was grabbing onto that version of me, you know, and pulling it forward. That makes sense?
Oh, totally. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you ride around a limo now?
Not all the time. Not all the time.
Not all the time.
Yeah, but no, I
You
have.
give the driver his days off. Right?
Yeah, I have made it a point to, you know, experience, because I remember thinking to myself, well, I've experienced everything on this side of the spectrum. I've experienced being so low, broken, poor that I'm starving to death. And you know what? I want to experience what it's like to live a life of abundance. And one thing that gets on my nerves in the spiritual community is there's so many spiritual people who act like money is bad. And
Yes, I was going to bring that up. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like no. Anyway, what was you going to say about it though? Because
Oh, I was just going to ask you or bring up the conversation about the spiritual community where a lot of practitioners really struggle with financial abundance, and that, and especially I've noticed that if you charge for your services on the other side of the spectrum, that there's something wrong with you. Why aren't you
yeah,
giving services away? And I started out feeling that guilty thing of charging for my services
hmm
because of that program. And so there's a lot of that bad, thoughts about the programming around money
yeah.
and feeling abundant and being abundant in that
Mhm.
community. Sure.
Yeah, people don't understand the way the energy of money operates, and this
Yeah.
this goes into a lot of the mechanics of manifestation. Money is an energy. People
Right.
don't understand that those paper things you have in your wallet and that number in your bank account, that's not actual money. That's just the physical representation of the energy. And it all has to do with your perception. And in order to really start getting on the path to where you're a frequency match to that energy, it has to do with your perception and how you perceive it. And we've been so conditioned to believe that money is a thing out here that I need badly. And it's hard to get. It's hard to get. Only special privileged people are allowed to have a lot of it. And I need it. And it keeps you in that lack vibration. Money flows, period. That's
Yeah.
the ebb and flow, like the figure eight. It has to flow out and in and out and in. And you have to be able to have that flow open on both ends.
Yes.
Most people clamp it off on one end, the other, or both. Some people clamp it off to where they don't let any go out. And
Mm-hmm.
some people clamp it off to where they don't let it come in too. Again, where like you said, oh, I felt guilty charging for it. That's clamping it off and preventing it from coming in.
Right.
And people just they have a really difficult time understanding that it's an energy. And the
Yeah.
energy is your perception. Once you get people to comprehend that, but I've coached clients who come from a long line of people who misuse that energy and they can't even wrap their mind. I mean, I may as well be trying to explain to them that you can breathe underwater. Like they can't even
Wow.
comprehend it.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, it's money is no different than a knife. I got a knife in my kitchen. What am I going to do with that knife? You could do something really horrible with it if you wanted, but I could also use it to cook a meal, and
Uh-huh.
it's no different than people
It's
who
a
say,
tool.
yeah, people say guns are bad. They're not. It's the person holding it that's good or bad. Money is
It's
no
the
different.
person behind the gun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a
Mhm.
tool, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, you're reminding me of what Yeshua helped me remember, the figure eight. And that was my mantra that replaced the other one was infinity. And also he showed me that um flow with the tool with money. And there has to be flow to keep things going in society, to keep things going in your life. There has to be flow. Yeah.
hmm
So it's exactly what he showed me in visual all the time. So
hmm
good stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely.
When I was taking those courses to learn how manifestation works, I remember that they what they said was you have to stop worrying about money. And I remember I'm like, well, how am I going to stop worrying about money? I'm broke. And they
Yeah.
said, you don't worry about money because you're broke. You're broke because you worry about money. And it didn't make sense at first. I was like, what? And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, worrying about money is a choice.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about it, but my rent's late, so that doesn't mean I have to worry about it. So I remember when it comes to reprogramming your frequency to attract something, you have to give yourself patience to rewrite the connections in your brain. This takes time. It's not a
Good
switch
point.
you flip overnight.
Yeah.
But I remember I would start thinking, well, you know what? I'm going to stop worrying about it. So when I go to the store to go shopping, I'm not going to worry about it. Money will be there when I need it. I'm going to stop stressing about it. I'm going to stop worrying about it. And that took a good year, year and a half of conditioning my brain to stop thinking those thoughts of worrying about money. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. Yeah, definitely. Cause that's what comes first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the thought
Mm-hmm.
process. And
Yeah.
then the rest follows.
And the
Yeah,
feeling, yeah. The thought and the feeling.
yeah,
And the thought feeling wheel, that's kind of like that's a pattern. You have a thought that creates a feeling, and the feeling creates another thought, which creates another feeling. And you have to put a stop to that,
right.
because it's not money that you want. What you want is to not need to worry about money. If you spend all of your time worrying about money, you're going to keep creating situations in your life where you need to worry about money. And you have to stop worrying about money first. And that's not financial advice. That's energy advice. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. When you start perfect, when you start to see the world through the eyes of energetics, energy and frequency, everything changes.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
really does. Yeah.
And understanding how it functions and how it operates. And when it all
Right.
comes down to it, it's your own energy, your own frequency, because that's the biggest thing, is being able to identify what your frequency is. And one of the ways that I tell people to figure this out is, when you're going to bed at night, every night, take an honest look back during the day and ask yourself, how did I feel most of the day? No judgment. I was pretty stressed out all day. Okay. Well, what about the day before that and the week before that? You spend all of your time stressed out. Well, that tells you what your frequency is. And that might tell you why you keep attracting situations that harmoniously resonate with that frequency, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way of the universe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. You keep playing with your cards. Are you gonna do a reading?
Oh, no, I
Yeah.
just do that. That's just a
It's
nervous
habit.
tick of mine. Yeah. Yeah. They're here, and I'm going to have
Well,
to get to work.
let's let's talk about your tarot reading and how you came upon that and what that
Oh, okay. Well,
doing
do
in
we
your
have
life.
time?
We have, yeah, we do. We have a little time.
Okay,
Yeah.
because it's kind of a fascinating story.
Yeah.
And usually I give the condensed version of it, but the whole story is actually really fascinating.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving away from the city that I was living in, and I moved all the way over to the other side of the country, where somebody, because I went homeless again, and some random Facebook friend offered me a place to stay. It was cold. I was about to freeze to death. And she said, if you can make it here, you can stay with me. So I hopped on a bus, took my last paycheck, and moved. And then when I showed up, I ended up experiencing, for some reason, at the time, what was the most crazy, intense connection with a person I've ever experienced in my life. It made me really uncomfortable. It
Mm.
felt, I don't know if you ever met a person like that, where you feel so connected, you feel naked and exposed.
Mhm.
Like it feels like they're in your head. Like, it
It's
was
rare.
crazy.
Mhm.
So I stayed there for about 6 months. And during that time that I was staying there, one day, she was off at work. And by the way, nothing romantic or sexual or anything like that happened between us. It never even went there, you know. But she was at work one day, and she called me and she said, I have a friend coming over that I haven't seen in a couple of years. Would you mind maybe straightening the house up a little bit? I said, sure. So later on that night, this random lady comes over and visits, and it's her friend. And she looks at me and she goes, I'm supposed to read for you. And I said, what the hell does that mean? She said, I don't know why, but Spirit is telling me I'm supposed to read for you. Do I have your permission? I said, sure, I guess. Why not? So a couple days later, she calls me. We exchange numbers. She calls me up. She picks me up and takes me to her house. And she starts flipping these strange, weird, funny cards all over the place that have all these weird pictures on them. And she starts telling me details about my childhood that nobody knows. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Freaked me out. And then she started telling me some of the things that were going to happen. And it's really freaked me out. I was like, whoa. But I buried that away and just kind of tried to tuck it away and forget about it. Long story short, fast forward, I end up leaving that town and I moved. That was in Idaho. I ended up leaving and moving again up to Maine. So I do a complete all the way up to the East Coast.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm working at a car wash and, you know, got a little life that I've built there. I start seeing YouTube tarot readings suggested to me on my feed. And I thought, well, who would watch something stupid like that? That's got to be the dumbest thing I have ever seen. But I start seeing, good God, a lot of people are watching these things. These things got 20,000, 30,000, 100,000 views. Nah, that's stupid. That's so dumb, you know. But every day they would get recommended to me. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I got a tarot reading. So I know it's legit. But nah, that's stupid. There's no way that you could tell me anything about my life by reading for my zodiac sign. So, but after 2 or 3 months, I finally said, you know what? Let me just see what that's all about. So I clicked on it and it told the story of that crazy intense connection that I experienced with that person. And then it was made clear why that lady said, I'm supposed to read for you. It was made clear then. Oh, okay. So I became obsessed with and addicted to these YouTube tarot videos, you know, and again, it was a secret. I became very fascinated with it. And I would watch all these readings and I would never get the clarity that I was looking for. I'm like, okay, you're telling the story over and over and over and over and over, but it's not getting anywhere. It's just leading me in circles. So I thought, well, I'm broke. I can't afford a personal reading from somebody, but I can afford to take $18 up to the spiritual store, buy me a deck of these little things and learn how to read these things myself. So that's what I did. And that's the only reason that I ever picked them up, is to try to gain clarity on my own situation. And of course I didn't. I just kept getting the same thing that the YouTube readers were getting. And then this little voice in the back of my head started saying, what if I put a couple of those tarot videos on YouTube? Nah, I couldn't do that. I would get laughed off of the internet. That would be so embarrassing. But what would happen? I mean, I've spent the past 6 months obsessively learning how to read these things. So finally, that calling kept getting louder and louder. And finally, I just had to scratch the itch. I was like, okay, I'm going to put a couple of those videos on my channel just to shut this little voice up. And boom, that was it from there. It blew up overnight. And then after that, as soon as that happened, the relationship that I was in took an immediate left-hand turn. And I ended up breaking up with the girl I was dating, had to move. And so I had to uproot almost immediately within a matter of a few short weeks. So again, I was kind of backed into a corner where this is my only source of income. I'm completely unstable. I don't have a stable home. I don't have family. I don't have anybody, but I do have a phone and a tarot deck. And this is how I can make money. So I was kind of like pushed into it and I've just kept it going. And
nice. Yeah. Well, you help a lot of people. I noticed that you also use astrology along with your tarot readings. Is that correct?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not 100% knowledgeable in actual astrology with like what's actually happening in the sky. I'm not an expert on that, but as far as the astrological signs, I'm familiar with the energy of the astrological signs. So that's why I say I primarily specialize in energy behavior. So say, for example, somebody comes to me and they say, I'm Aries dealing with a Scorpio. Well, I'm like, okay, well, your zodiac sign, what that tells me is that that's an energy that you're under the influence of, you know? So we all were born under a certain planetary alignment, and those were the energies that were hitting the planet during our time of birth, and that affects you in certain ways. And I'm not one of the people that subscribes to the idea that your zodiac sign controls you, but it's just an energy. If I was born when the sun was in Aquarius and the moon was in Virgo, that tells me some of the energies that are influencing me. So it makes it a little bit easier for me to break down the inner workings behind how you ended up in this situation, what this person's energy is like, and how your energies are going to behave together and work together, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Because I guess it all, I mean, we're all this one big energy of influences
Mm-hmm.
and life plan
Mm-hmm.
and our programming,
Yeah.
the big ball of energy that
Mm-hmm.
we've come into our lifetime with, and our bodies carry so much within them
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
And
So do you
getting
teach
people.
tarot? Go
Do I
ahead.
teach tarot? Well, I do have a course in my School of Self Mastery,
Uh-huh.
uh, how to read the tarot. It's $11.11, where it's a pretty long course because I go through card for card, one video for each card, and there's 78 cards where I break down the textbook meaning behind each card and the way I personally interpret it and some of the ways that I use it. And then at
Mm-hmm.
the end, because that when it comes to reading the tarot, that learning what the cards mean, I think, is only about 25% of reading the tarot. The rest of it is all your intuition and trusting yourself
Yeah.
and understanding how to just trust yourself and use your intuition. And that's something that I don't think can be taught.
Right.
So I do have a course on it to answer your question.
Okay. Yeah, nice. My first deck I ever bought 20 years ago was a tarot deck. And I bought the book with it that went with it.
Mm,
It was a Crowley deck, and I just couldn't I couldn't. I think it was because I was trying too hard to follow the book.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, so it wasn't my thing at the time. I still have
yeah.
that deck. It's a beautiful deck. But yeah, that was
Yeah, when you're learning how to trust your intuition, there's many times that I'll lay a spread out and there'll only be two cards that are talking to me in the whole spread,
mhm.
that tell me the main, and I'll say, okay, these don't mean anything, so I'm not even paying attention to those. It's just these two. And that happens very frequently. And actually, honestly, too, there's sometimes where people will ask me a question. I already know the answer.
Yeah,
I already know it. I get the download immediately and I'll just lay the spread out for show. I've done that before.
right.
It's not
Oh
something I
yeah,
do all the time, but I mean, it's more an intuitive thing than anything.
right.
And the cards are just a little reference, a little guide, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I wanted to share something with you real quick. And I had an experience where you were talking about going back to the man who pulled over and told you you're going to be riding in the back of a limo,
Yeah.
right? I had an out of body experience once where I was standing in front of a double-doored room talking to a couple of males at the time, and we were waiting for someone to join us. And this man comes running up. He's bald headed and he's smiling. He's really happy to see me, and I'm happy to see him. And but there was something that serious about it. And as soon as he sees me, he loses his smile. And then we touch heads. We touch heads right here, and that's our greeting. And I tell him that they're asked the council, his group council is asking him to go to Earth to make an intervention on a brother. We call him a brother. I don't know if it was blood brother or whatever, group brother, soul group brother, because he was in a really bad place with addiction. And I felt like it was a meth or something like that.
Hmm.
And he didn't have to be born. He didn't have to reincarnate because he was in the higher realms where he hadn't reincarnated. He was up there. And would he be able to appear to him like a come to Jesus moment kind of thing, right?
Mm.
For his brother. And he said yes. And we opened up the doors, and there is a group of beings sitting there watching a screen. And it's showing his brother, the person that is in trouble and needs his help. And so, and he's looks really, really bad. He looks like, like you would see an addicted person on the streets,
Mm.
a meth head on the streets kind of thing. And so he goes in there, and then we close the doors, and that job is done.
Mm.
It's like you don't think about how these things get. That was really profound for me because it's like, how do these things get planned? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It happened to us again a couple of years ago
Oh
where
yeah.
me and my family, we went hiking in the desert, in Las Vegas. And the trail that we picked, we had an app where you can pick trails, you know, and there was a trail that we picked that the path goes for about, I don't know, a mile, and then it loops around for another mile and then brings you back to where you started. And there's supposed to be a sign with an arrow pointing this way. And I don't know if the sign was not there or we just didn't see it, but we just kept going. And we ended up climbing the mountain range, the whole mountain range around Las Vegas. We climbed to the top of that mountain. And
Wow.
and we're thinking, man, when is this supposed to lead us back to the start? We looked over on the other side of the mountain from the top, and there was nothing but 100 miles of nothing but vast desert. So we're like, well, I guess we're just going to keep going. Nothing out there, nothing. So we start to go down the mountain, and we're just going to keep going. And then there's this dude coming from there. Like I don't know why he would be coming from there, but he was coming from there. And he said, you passed the trail. And we're like, oh, okay, thanks, cool. So we stop for a minute and sit down, and then we turn around. 30 seconds later, he was gone.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was
Yeah.
crazy. Whoa, I know that was a guide.
That was
We would have kept going, you know, no telling when we would have stopped.
yeah.
Mhm.
I love those moments. Yeah, totally. Yeah, so tarot is your thing for now, you
For
were
now,
saying earlier.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for now, it's not something that I wanted to do necessarily. And I know that sounds horrible. I didn't picture myself, because if you look at most people who read the tarot, well, nowadays I don't know who's doing what out there in YouTube tarot land, but you know, back when I started, there was nobody like me reading the
Right.
tarot. And I first stepped into this community sticking out like a sore thumb. That's probably why my following grew so fast, you know. And to me, it's still a little bit embarrassing. I won't lie. It's still, it's and I hate that sounds horrible because I'm very thankful to have my own business where, you know, my wife built and runs the business, you know, so we run this business together, and you know, I'm financially okay. But it's just, there's still something I think about my ego that just didn't want to be associated with that community, you know? So people ask me all the time, what do you do for a living? I say, I'm a YouTuber. Whoa, cool, a YouTuber. You mean that's what you do for money? I'm like, yeah. And what do you do? And I'm like, oh, you know, I'm like, I'm a tarot reader. And then they're like, you're a what? I'm a tarot reader. They're like, what do you mean read tarot for YouTube? And I have to break it down and explain it. And it's just, again, like we were talking off camera, though, I get the assignment,
Yeah.
you know, because the reason that the universe put me in this position is because the people out there who follow this kind of content are some of the most broken, lost people on the planet. And
Mhm.
let's be honest, I hate to sound like this, but the overwhelming majority of people reading tarot on YouTube aren't helping them. They're
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
helping them. They
Yeah.
just make a video saying your ex is coming back. And these people just sit and wait. Oh my God. So the YouTube reader's telling me my ex is coming back. When are they coming? When are they coming? They'll sit for years just waiting on their ex to come back. And that's not what I do. I use the tarot to bring you in. And then once I get you here, I plant some seeds in your mind that hopefully allow you to start maybe awakening and trusting the universe. And my goal is to help people awaken. So,
Mhm.
you know, I use the tarot to lure you to me. And then once I get you here, I plant some seeds in your mind and send you on your way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
Good.
my
Yeah. Tarot times 10 times 100. Okay.
assignment. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, that's
Mhm.
good because people need that definitely, and they need guidance and especially nowadays where things are so chaotic and topsy-turvy and everything. And you know, things are coming up in people where we've all been traumatized in some way or
Mhm.
somehow, and that's why people are looking for answers and wanting to know what's next kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's an avenue that is good for you. Thank you for being present with those people for
Yeah,
sure.
it can
Yeah.
be it's a task because again, one of the trickiest parts about it is that most of the people who are into that kind of thing, like divination, tarot readings and whatnot, they approach it from the perspective of my future happens to me.
Yeah.
And I need to know what's going to happen. And the way I explain it to people is a tarot reader who just simply tells you what's going to happen is no different than your friend who sits next to you in math class and gives you the answer to the test. That's
Good
not helpful.
point.
Yeah, that's
Good
not helpful.
analogy. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So my goal is to help you learn how to solve the problem yourself. So
Right.
it's a heavy task. It's a very heavy task, but
Yeah.
that's
And,
my job for now.
and helping people co-create their own reality, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And real understanding, remembering that we do. That's
Yep.
huge. That's
hmm
huge for sure. And then when that clicks, like you were saying earlier, then things change for people. Definitely. I mean, I wanted to mention when you were talking about, I guess it was a law of attraction and learning more about it. And you said that your ego, or that you were like, this can't be happening. Oh, I know, it was your affirmation.
Mm,
And though that hurt and broken part of yourself was
yeah.
screaming out, no, 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 no.
Yeah. hmm Because that's the we have to fight against the subconscious program.
Right.
And again, if you want to look at it from a scientific perspective, that part of you that governs your subconscious program is the same part of you that governs everything you do. 95% of your daily life is governed by that subconscious program. You wake up in the morning on the same side of the bed, and you get coffee out of your same mug, and you use the bathroom at the same time, and your morning routine, and then light up a cigarette at the same time or whatever. That morning routine is all governed by your subconscious mind. And it's not just your actions. People think, when they think habit, they think a physical action of some sort. No, your habits are the way you think too.
Yeah.
And changing your frequency is no different than forming or breaking any habit. And they actually have the tools and the technology to measure it. This was, I think it was Dr. Joe Dispenza that broke it down this way. What they did was they did an experiment where they took two groups of people, Group A and Group B, and they gave everybody in both groups a brain scan just to see where they are neurologically. So then they took Group A and they made everybody in that group sit down at a piano every day for like 8 weeks and practice a little melody, like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And then after the 8-week period, they gave everybody in that group another brain scan, and they could see the new connections that had formed in their brains from repeating that habit every single day. They took Group B and they had them not touch a piano. They had them sit down and think about practicing the melody every day, same everything, but they never saw a piano. They never touched it. They thought about it. And then the same thing, they gave them another brain scan. 8 weeks later, the exact same new connections formed in the brains of those who used thought alone as the brains of people who actually sat down and touched a piano. And what that means is we have the ability to rewrite the chemistry of our own brain with thought alone.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I can sit here, basically what you're saying is I can sit here and work out in my mind, do my workout in my mind, and it'll work. I believe it.
It's this, yes, the same operating system that governs your actions you take, and it governs your thoughts. So
Yes.
when it comes to your vibration, that subconscious, feeling of, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not good looking enough, I'm not worthy, those thoughts that we think, that's a program.
Yeah.
And the only reason you believe that is because for whatever reason you've been thinking that. Usually it happens when you're a kid. Like, I know my grandfather. I don't blame him at all. He did the best he could. He gave me the best childhood he could possibly give me. But one thing he would say to me all the time is, you're going to be a worthless piece of crap, just like your father. He would always tell me that when he would get mad at me. Now, I can think back and I can understand why he said that to me. You know what I mean? So I'm not blaming him. I'm not playing the victim, but that did put a thought in my head to where I started saying that to myself. And I had to take it upon myself to recognize that and work to fight against it. No different than if I wanted to start going to the gym every day. I need to make that part of my daily routine to where it's second nature. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, totally. Makes sense. Fascinating. I love it.
Hmm.
Talk about the law of attraction or just co-creation all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool. I'm glad that it's starting to become mainstream, and
Yeah.
that's some I do have some pretty big things coming up in the future that I can't really talk about publicly, but I will probably be in a position to help it become mainstream in the future. So
Nice. I love
that's
that.
yeah, that's my goal. That's what I'm working towards now. So next year is going to be a big year.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
That's exciting. Good for
Yeah,
you. Yeah, definitely. So
absolutely.
I have to ask you this question. It's very, very important to me. Where did you get your Southern accent?
I
I lived
was
in the South pretty much most of my life and never picked up a Southern accent. I'm
I
so
don't know.
jealous.
I was born and raised right there on the border between Southern Indiana and Louisville, Kentucky, and I was raised by my grandparents who were old farmers. I never thought that I had an accent until, well, I mean, everybody always asks me that,
Yeah.
but for some reason, I don't know why I have this weird thing where when I moved up to New England, up in Maine. I don't know if you've ever been to New England, but they are the strangest talking people in this whole country. And they would always comment on my accent. I'm like, dude, I can't even understand you. What are you talking about my accent? So I think living up there, for some reason, subconsciously made me exaggerate it even more, maybe, I guess. But I
Well,
don't know. I've been hearing that. I hear that everywhere I go. I don't feel like I have an accent. I mean, if you go
of
to where I'm
course.
from, yeah, if you go to where I'm from, there's people there who talk so much more country than me. So I don't know, but I think
Yeah.
it's just has to do with where I was born and raised, you know?
I can see Kentucky. I didn't think of Indiana as being having that kind of accent.
Oh yeah.
They, I lived in Louisiana for a while, and I think that I haven't been in New England, but when I first moved to Louisiana as a kid, I could not understand anything people were saying because
Oh
it
yeah.
was Cajun,
Yeah.
Cajun, and I'm like, "What is that? A different language? What are you speaking?" I thought it was a different language. It's kind of French and English. Well,
Yeah. Hmm.
there, yeah. So that's that's cool stuff. So, do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
mind giving us a little reading for on like a general kind of thing
About what?
before we end?
About what?
Oh, maybe the state of affairs or how the future thing.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Oh, the death card. Beautiful.
Mm,
That's about a slow, gradual transitionary process from one cycle to a new cycle, death
mm.
and rebirth. We are about to go through some crazy stuff. Okay. You think about where we are right now. Where we are is we're in the November leading up to an election year. Now, rewind back and think about where you were last November before election year, right? And, you were comfortable and probably thought you had a good idea of what your life was all about and where you were headed. And you probably had some plans for the next year. And then you got splashed in the face with cold water when election year rolled around, didn't you? It ain't over. It's not over. Okay. However, you may start to think that some really bad things are happening that are very unjust and unfair. Don't lose sleep. Don't allow yourself to get swallowed up by the anxiety and the fear. It has to go down this way. Okay. Because we are transitioning from an old world to a new world. And we light workers have been talking about this shift and this transition for years now. Well, we're in the middle of it now.
Hmm.
We're in the middle of it now. Next year is going to be a big year. Now, basically, when it all comes down to it, 10 years from now, I'm not saying it's going to take 10 years, but 10 years from today, everything that you or I have ever known about being a human on planet Earth is going to be completely different. Completely different. And we've already seen the kickoff to that transition back in 2020. And we're going to see some more next year.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think the biggest thing here is don't worry, relax. It'll be okay. There's going to be some scary stuff. And the
Yeah.
people who haven't been in touch with their energy and they've been ignoring the truth, they've been ignoring, they refusing to awaken, refusing to tap in and develop that relationship with the universe, they're going to have a hard time. They're going to have a real hard time. Now, those of us who have started developing that relationship with source, relationship with spirit, and we have learned how to trust, okay, next year is going to be a big test of your trust. Big test. Going to be some scary stuff. So no matter what happens, relax. It'll be all right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's crazy times for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for that reminder for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for talking with me, Rich. I have a
Mm-hmm.
couple questions I ask my guests, if you don't mind also
Sure.
answering a couple questions. What do you feel is the purpose of life on Earth?
Mm. That's a really hard question to lay a blanket on.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, at the end of the day, from a perspective all the way outside of this game, this universe is just like an arcade, and planet Earth is an arcade game, and everybody comes here and plays it for a different reason. Some people come here just because it's fun and they want to, see how many challenges they can create for themselves and overcome. There's other people who just want to try it out and see, and then they get sucked into it and addicted to it, and they want to keep coming back because it's fun. Other people come here because they say, you know what, I want to experience what it's like to, I don't know, have something horrible happen to me, or I want to experience what it's like to have something amazing happen to me. I want to, so I don't think that there's like this one size fits all. And that's another big issue that I see in the spiritual community is people always, no matter what religion or spiritual path people follow, they always try to put this one big blanket over everything and everybody, when we're
Mm-hmm.
all here creating our own unique experience for our own unique reasons,
Right.
So I think the purpose of life is whatever your life is right now, from the minute you were born to this moment, that's your purpose.
Perfect.
If that makes any sense.
No, it makes total sense. Definitely. And also, for anyone who's watching is going through a really rough time right now, do you have any words of wisdom or that you can share with them?
Yeah. Depending on what it is too, of course. There's nothing, and this may be some words that'll help, that it may piss you off too. It just totally depends. But whatever it is that you're going through, there's nothing that you will ever experience in this life that you didn't either agree to or at least know that it was a possibility before you came in here. The majority of it, you agreed to it. The majority of the challenges and the struggles that you're going through right now, you planned it out before you got here. The majority of it, not all of it. There's exceptions to everything, because lots of people plan their lifetime out and they get lost and they detour and end up off path. But even at that, you knew all about it before you got here. Whatever it is that you're going through, always default to, and this is hard. Everything happens for a reason. You have to be able to maintain an open heart and an open mind. And this has sometimes taken me anywhere upwards of 3 years to get an answer on this. I don't know why this is happening, but I'm trusting that the universe one day is going to show me why this is happening. And you have to hold that. You have to hold that. You are the only being in this entire universe who is capable of and responsible for assigning a meaning to the things that happen to you in your life. You're the only one that gets to do that. Without your belief and your perception, your experiences in life are meaningless. You're the one that decides why this is happening. Don't be so quick to judge why it's happening right now, because most of the time, the universe is not going to let you know why it's happening until it's done. Because if you knew, you'd probably sabotage the path. So hold that open heart and that open mind. And if you can hold that, and again, you got to be patient. I've waited 2-3 years, but if you can hold that, I promise you, the universe will always show you why it was happening, and you'll be thankful one day. That's what
Nice.
I would say.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and thanks for the reading.
Mhm.
And thank you for chatting with me. It's been a pleasure. I've
Mhm.
learned so much. Yeah.
Appreciate you.
And of course, and if you could let us know what your YouTube channel is and your website, so I will have it down in the details.
Yeah, my YouTube channel is just my name, Rich Lopp, RICHLOPP, and my website is tarot with Rich, all one word, .com.
Okay. And your mastery is also on,
Yeah, that's on there.
it's on there. Okay.
Yep.
All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for being here and for watching. And please do that YouTube stuff, subscribe, like, comment if you enjoyed the content and enjoyed our conversation. And we'll see you again.